Welcome to the Day After Live, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm Joe Cook, got Coach Dub, got James Hayden. We're here to provide our reaction to, guys, Texas is in the playoff. We knew that would be the case. We did not know who they'd be playing, but we'll dive into the rest of the 12-team field. A little bit of some extra reaction from the from the SEC championship. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, head to InsideTexas.com. We'll have full-on coverage of all things college football playoff, all things that that Texas players called the Makuba Bowl. That's what Steve Sarkisian joked earlier today on a Zoom call. His players were all kind of excited for the Austin LBJ product to be able to get a matchup with his old team in Clemson, and even Dabo was pretty complimentary of Makuba during a little quick ESPN hit. So this one should be a lot of fun as we throw the bracket there on the screen.
Yeah, when I saw that quote, I was like, yeah, I know Makuba's like, he's going to be really juiced up for this game, right? Like, glad that he doesn't have to miss or sit out a half after the hit he put on the quarterback from Georgia, but I know he's going to be amped up, juiced up for this game, going against old teammates. Guys, he probably, in practice, like, ooh, if this was a real game, I would have got you. Now he gets his chance, all right, to go and face those guys. So it's going to be fun. And I know he's going to have extra motivation for this one.
James, when we look at this bracket, you see the 4 byes. You see Arizona getting the nod over Clemson. You see, obviously, SMU in there above Alabama. Just 3 SEC teams. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 Big Ten teams. The 2 ACC teams, an independent, and then the Mountain West. What really sticks out to you about this bracket?
Yeah, I mean, the SEC only getting 3 teams in. We remember, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, everybody talking about, well, what if A&M, Texas, LSU, all these teams go 10-2? And the SEC just kind of cannibalized itself, and now it led to the Big Ten, which has been a top-heavy conference in the last 5 years. And even with the new expansion, there's still, if not even more top-heavy now. They got 4 teams in. I think they only have 4 teams ranked, which is pretty absurd when you think about it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. I think everybody's kind of in agreement. Even the guys on ESPN were saying it is stupid to not do top 4 teams get a bye and do this, oh, I win the tournament or I win the conference championship, so now I get a bye. Because, as much as I'm fighting for the little guy saying I wanted SMU over Bama, you can't sit there and tell me that, Arizona State, for example, with losses to Cincinnati and Texas Tech, or Boise, with their best win is UNLV, no offense to Coach Dub. But that to say those guys deserve it over a Texas or even a, Ohio State or Penn State, even to say that Penn State and Texas shouldn't have taken those spots. I think in the actual rankings we had, as you see, Penn State and Texas were in those slots. So, I mean, that's definitely a problem. This is the first year, so they're going to work a lot of the kinks out, I think, in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, just to knock this out of the way real quick, like, this is only for this year and next year, agreed to at least. We're not sure what the playoffs is going to look like in 2026. If progress continues, it'll probably be 14 teams and look something like this. I don't know what it'll look like. It'll include a lot more teams. But we don't get a 12-team playoff unless we agree, not we, but unless everybody agrees to have this 4 bye system, because then, Boise State, they're not even going to make it. SMU's not going to make it. It's just part of what we had to go through to get to this system. I think they will probably be able to make sure it changes up a little bit. Let's talk about the matchup with Clemson. I'm good with basically everything that happened. I would have preferred SMU over Alabama. I would not have minded Alabama. I think it would have been defensible. With 12 teams, it's not like it's not like a situation like last year where you look around and it's like, oh my gosh, how could you do something like that? Like, there are 12 teams. Like, the top of the heap is in this tournament. But let's talk a little bit about Clemson, Coach. They've got Dabo Swinney's been there for a long time, I think 17 years. As our buddy UP Parking explains, first ever matchup between the two schools. Never have played. Games in Austin. A few years ago, Dabo Sweeney watched Cade Klubnik and the Westlake Chaps take on the Vandegrift Vipers, beat the dog out of them at DKR. They got Garrett Riley there at offensive coordinator, a little bit of an air raid guy. Got a defensive system that features a lot of great defensive linemen. Just kind of off the top, what are your thoughts about this Texas versus Clemson matchup, which will be an afternoon home game on Saturday the 21st?
Yeah, I know Clemson's 10-3. Everybody's ready to write Dabo off because he doesn't want to adapt. He doesn't recruit the portal. The whole nine. And some kind of way, he's found a way to get his team 10-3 and make it to the playoffs. First thing when I look at Clemson is they have a very, very good defense. And I know SMU was able to put points on them, but you go look at all the teams they played with dual threat quarterbacks, they've struggled all year. When you run traditionally at them, just downhill, ISO or outside zone, they do a good job of stopping that. And so it'll be interesting to see what their defensive line does versus our offensive line, because that'll be the key matchup. They really have a defensive end. Last name skips me, but he has 12 sacks on the season.
Parker.
Like he can get out there on the edge, right? They got two monsters on the inside. He can kind of claw gaps, and they got a speedy, fast defense. A couple of kids from the state of Texas, right? Even on offense, and Brian Wesco at receiver. So they got some playmakers on both sides of the football. I think it's a good matchup, athlete for athlete wise, and trenches versus our trenches. So it'll be a good game. I think it's going to come down to execution with this one, because Clemson. I know most people look at the record and say, "Oh, they're not that good from the ACC," but they pose a little bit of a threat, because they have some guys who can make plays and make things difficult for us. So we'll see. But you're giving Sark 2 weeks to prepare, though. So I think we got the edge in that.
Here's the thing: you're not giving Sark 2 weeks to prepare. You're giving PK 2 weeks to prepare. I think we haven't given that guy enough credit over the course of everything. Clemson was a win and in situation. If SMU had won, Clemson would have obviously missed the 12-team playoff. Got to give credit to that kicker. That's a clutch kick, 56 yards. For a conference championship as a freshman, super impressive. Out of the hold of one of Dabo's sons, I feel like. But James, you'll look at Clemson's schedule, and they got the brakes beat off them by Georgia.
Yeah.
They didn't have to play Miami. They didn't really, they have some not bad losses, but there's not a whole lot that's impressive about their resume, save for the fact that they got to 10 wins in a conference championship. What have you seen maybe from the Tigers that, aside from Klubnik, aside from the fellow chap that you really need to look out for?
Antonio Williams is quite good. Wesco, there's a lot of freshman receivers. They got young receivers. The thing against Georgia is they weren't playing those freshman receivers, and they brought them in, and it gave their offense kind of a new dynamic. And we saw them, you look up and you're like, they'd rattled off 6 or 7 in a row before that Louisville game. Their offense was explosive, right? They scored 60, I think, in back-to-back games. Klubnik was really hitting his rhythm. But the thing is our secondary is our strong suit. And like you were saying, PK getting 2 weeks. And they have a tendency to kind of stall out. They'll have these really explosive first halves. And then even last night, if you didn't watch the game, they gave up a lead, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times people just see the logo, and if you're just an SEC fan or a Texas fan, a lot of people pick Clemson over SMU, for example. It did end up working, but the reason that kind of happened was SMU had 2 turnovers. Clemson had no turnovers, no penalties, right? So when you look at that and say odds makers, they would probably on a neutral field favor SMU, right? So I just think Clemson is really I think will be kind of easy to stop for PK. I think it won't be necessarily as bad as the Georgia game, but I wouldn't be surprised if they run into some similar issues. As good as they were in the second half of the season, like we were saying, they lost to Louisville at home, and then they lost to South Carolina at home. So they didn't get tested, and their best win was SMU on the year.
One thing over the course of watching the end of that game, and granted, necessity was part of this, but like Clemson seems susceptible not just to both rushing and passing. Like SMU ran the ball a little bit to get back into that game, but it was tempo. And granted, that's kind of what I can't remember what tree Lashley comes from. Kind of that Clemson offense tree, the original one with Chad Morris, I feel like, right? But they used a lot of tempo, used some balance with rushing and passing to get back into the game. The days of old where Brent Venables is just telling Christian Wilkins and 3 of his friends to go get after the passer are not going on in Clemson right now. But they still have good defensive linemen. They still have good linebackers. They still have some good, this is a conference champion team, but I feel like some of what Texas is able to do well may translate. And, it's one of those things where, hey, they may not have to face another defensive line like Georgia's until they maybe face Georgia's. So all that progress that was made rushing the football, rushing on outside zone, I think a lot of that had to do with not facing Georgia over the course of like the last few weeks of the season. Well, they're not going to be facing Georgia until, a potential championship game rematch. So maybe you might see some progress again, some return to form again from the rushing game.
I thought about this, Joe. The offensive coordinator, Gary Rowley, he held them to 10 points when he was at TCU, and they had the most explosive offense, one of the most explosive offenses that year. And he held Raleigh and TCU to 10 points. PK did. So he got some familiarity there. So, like you said, 2 weeks for PK to prepare. That will give him a chance.
And you got to think, which team do you think was better than 2022 TCU or 2024 Clemson? And also Texas from 22 to 24, which this is like a generationally good Texas defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 22 Texas defense was good, but not great. Still, what was it? One bust by a defensive back, and then, Kendra Miller having a real big run. But it was 2 busts.
Was it?
That really got TCU in position. So there's some opportunity for Texas in this one. Anything else from the bracket that stands out? I mean, if you're Texas, maybe you wanted to see Boise State, but you're not upset that, your second round game, if you get there, if you're earn the spot there, is against Arizona State, your old Big 12 opponent. There's still some quality players: Scadaboo, Levitt, Troy O'Meary, Brian Carrington over in
Jake Smith.
Alford, Xavier Alford. They got a ton over there, man. Chris Dorbor. What is this?
Jordan Tyson. So I will say Arizona State is missing their number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, they put it on Iowa State. Like they took that game over. Went all the way through whatever Matt Campbell was trying to do. But that would also be a game. It's not listed on the screen. That would be a game in Atlanta. And you'd think it'd be back in Glendale in the Phoenix area. Boise State being that 3, they get the proximity pick. So you had Oregon pick. Oregon pick the Rose Bowl. Georgia picked the Sugar Bowl, I believe. And then Boise picked the Fiesta Bowl. So Arizona got the last pick. That last pick means Atlanta. So if Texas gets past Clemson, they would play Arizona State in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I believe.
Isn't the championship there too?
Championships there too, so they can play there again.
They got a monopoly on every single neutral site game.
The semifinal game, if they were fortunate enough to get that far, that would be in the Cotton Bowl. So that's pretty good ordeal for them. Good carrot on the stick to get there. We'll get to some of the more pressing, questions about the game. Wanted to get a little bit into the playoff matchup. But before we keep on going, had to give some love to our sponsor, that is Academy Sports and Outdoors.
This is the start of something fun, kind that's best had outdoors, where family gathers, and adventure awaits. The good tidings that make for even better times. And with the right stuff at the right price, the most wonderful time of year happens here. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.
Thank you to Academy. Hear from them a little bit more later in the show. Any of the other first round matchups? I mean, if you're Oregon, you got to feel a little upset that you have to face either Tennessee or Ohio State after going 13-0, being the only undefeated team in FBS football, and you got to face one of those two teams.
That's tough. for
The one thing that comes to my mind though is these home environments. Like you're gonna have DKR at 3:00. I think Ohio State's getting a night game, and Ohio State has this thing. I think it's like a school policy, athletic department policy, where they don't play night games after a certain point in November because it's cold in Ohio. They're throwing that out the window. Penn State, they're going to get a home game in the playoff, and Notre Dame, they're getting a home game in the playoff. So that's going to just this is one of the really, really cool aspects of the playoff that we get. There are its positives, there are its negatives. This is definitely one of the big positives, and it's going to make December 20th and 21st a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, looking at that Ohio State-Tennessee game, thought about it being cold, knowing that Tennessee likes to spread you out and throw it. If it's super cold, that ball's going to be super heavy. Kind of gives Ohio State an advantage weather-wise. SMU having to go to Penn State, that's kind of tough. But Indiana doesn't have, to travel too far, right? They go to South Bend, so that's going to be kind of interesting. But I think it's cool to get a home playoff game. That's what you play for, or trying to get a home playoff game. Or you play for the bye week, but hopefully if you don't get that, get a home playoff game. So, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, but sorry for Oregon, man. They're going to have to earn it. They want to win a championship. There's no easy road. It's not an easy road for everybody, but you know what I'm saying. Like for that, to have to play Ohio State again or Tennessee, that's going to be tough.
James, anything else on the bracket?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what people were looking to when this format first dropped, is everyone thought, oh, we'd love to be the 5 seed. For, just in general, I think a lot of people, I put out a poll on the Instagram, and it was like 70% of people said they would rather have another home game at DKR than the bye. I mean, the only thing that's, against Texas's favor and say Penn State is that they then had to play an extra game and don't get a bye. So if Texas went all the way, they're playing 17 games. That's a lot of wear and tear on college kids. Oregon, I guess that is just unfortunate. That's why people kind of have their qualms with this system, is that Oregon is going to have to go up against Ohio State, their toughest game of the season again, possibly. If not, then Tennessee, right? So, I mean, Texas does have a favorable draw. We'll kind of see what happens. You can't take anything for granted at this point in the year. But, I mean, all things considered, losing to Georgia a couple times, you would have liked to have gotten them once. That's not the worst case in the world. Another game at DKR. Yeah. And then, you'll be favored in your next one too. So, hey.
I love some of these comments. We all watched a 3-point game in overtime, right?
Where Texas outgained them by like 1,000,000 yards in the first half and just failed to execute.
Randy, if you had put this comment on October 20th, I would have agreed with you 100%. But I don't know if you can call a 3-point game in overtime and what's a hostile environment an ass beating. It was a defeat, an ass beating. So let's go through let's talk a little bit about the SEC championship game. I got to say that was probably 70-30 Georgia in that environment, and credit to them. That's why they're it's an advantage for them that they take full advantage of. I like this one from Peter Hansen. Would love to hear you guys discuss our offensive identity or lack thereof. And I think I touched on this, Coach. Sark and company talked about how outside zone was really, something they wanted to improve on. I kind of wondered if the fact that maybe them not playing Georgia was a reason that improved. And that's not to say they didn't go against good defensive lines. Like Florida has some big dudes up there. Texas A&M was thought to have a strong front. But they did it against teams not named Georgia. And then when they tried to do it against Georgia, it did not work out that well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons it doesn't work versus Georgia. They're such a downhill attacking team. When you pull, they're attacking that guard, and they're pushing him further back into the backfield, right? You saw Hayden Connor pull a few times. The defensive tackle was right on him, pushing him back. So the running back has to make a cut way sooner than he anticipates to. And so it really messes up against Georgia because they play – we call it playing the piano keys down the line. They play it so perfectly, and they're so strong at the point of attack. They're able to just really take away the wide zone. And you saw yesterday they get a ton of holding calls because those guys were just attacking downhill and setting the edge faster than most teams do. And so I thought we should have ran right at Georgia, kind of like we did Kentucky, run right at them and see if they could stop it, because I thought a few times we did run downhill right at him we got positive yards. But sometimes you're just the nature of habit. You're going to do what you think is best and what the percentages say you're good at, and that's outside zone. So I thought that's what we did.
James, one of the things I thought Steve Sarkisian put this game on Quinn Ewer's shoulders. Like that's what happened. That's what happens when you have 46 passing attempts. And Quinn played well, but he didn't play well enough to carry the whole team on his shoulders at the pass game. And a big symptom and big cause of that, I feel like, was because the run game struggled.
Yeah, I mean, how many quarterbacks are going to do well with 2 yards of carry, right? And getting sacked 6 times. Most of those were coverage sacks this time. It wasn't the complete, upfront dominance that we saw in the first one. But yeah, like you said, Quinn looked great in the first half. Aside from a couple of decisions, that one pick that should have been dropped, and then that one where he forced it because they ran it. I'm trying to think. This was before the Jade pick. What were those play calls like right before Quinn threw that pick? They ran it once.
It was Wisner right into the line. This was one of the worst. And granted, we all talk about how great a play caller Sark is. You have your low moments. It was Wisner into the teeth of the defense for a 1-yard loss. It was a play action off of that.
Oh, did Joe freeze? Hello? I can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's just me and you. But I think
shoot, did Joe's thing crash?
It may have, man, a little bit frozen.
All right, the show goes on, I guess.
Show goes on, but I think he's going right. We ran play action and then ran to the teeth of the defense, and we tried to play action the next play. We didn't gain any yards, so they weren't fooled by it, right? It was questionable a little bit. Same way with the fade balls. Like, we're not a fade ball team. We don't complete many fade balls. Why are we throwing so many? I thought we tried that way too much towards the end of the game. Maybe just trying to look for a pass interference call. I'm not sure, but they were all over it, man. They were all over a lot of the play calls. Even the little middle tight end screen they were going to run the gun or helm, completely covered, right? It's like, oh man. So it just happens. I guess it really just happens. Like, they really scouted Sark well. They scouted all the schemes and everything we do well. And Georgia's about the only team who's able to perform. Like, everybody else can scout us, but can they actually stop us? I feel like Georgia matches us across the board in the trenches, second level, and the third level. And I think we saw that. Same thing with Trevor Etienne. He's the only running back that could make us miss in space and go. Like, that's why I wrote about him a little bit. I was like, if he plays, he gives us problems because he just breaks tackles. He finds the cutback lane and he takes off, man. So, I don't know, man. It's just on our side. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. Is it seems like, a lot of teams could scout him good. They can know what Sark likes to do, what his MO kind of is. But Georgia has the athletes to execute. And it also seems like they've taken this game personally. I think it's bad for Texas that they have caught them off bad performances both times. If you remember Mississippi State, right, they played like crap at home. It was after they had just lost to Alabama a couple weeks before. And people are like, oh, Texas, 6.5-point favorite, I think it was, or something like that, right? People just thought, oh, Texas is the surefire number one. Georgia's not Georgia this year. When they go, dude, they walk in there, they beat them up physically, they're jumping all these screen routes, and none of the lateral game is working like we were talking about with the outside zone, right? And I think that was kind of a similar thing, is it just felt like at times it was a better performance, obviously only losing by 3, but at times to me it felt like, oh, here we go again. Like some of the times when, Quinn's pocket got collapsed on, or they run it into the teeth of the defense, or they try the outside zone, it wouldn't work, or a blown up screen pass. Like that one at the end, some of the play calling was questionable. I just don't understand why they basically played for a field goal right there and just threw a screen on 3rd and 10. And it just got lit up immediately. They were lighting up all the screens. And I think it seemed like Sark, again, was kind of shell-shocked, in my opinion, in some of the play calling. And then what happens is, like we were talking about, is the game got thrusted onto Quinn's back in the end, when ideally that's not. And that's not to say Quinn's not a great quarterback.
Right.
He's a great college quarterback, but look what happens when, for example, the game's put on Carson Beck's back, right? There's not a lot of quarterbacks this year in this class that are able, aside from maybe a Cam Ward or Shadur, where it's like, okay, you're going to win us the game. And they throw 46 times and it goes well. Typically when Carson Beck throws 46 times or Quinn throws 46 times, Texas and Georgia couldn't get their stuff, right? Yeah. So I think there was just a lot of Texas getting hit in the mouth, but how about like Georgia's is the most talented team they played by far. They get hit in the mouth. They got beat up physically. And like you said, the scouting was great. They knew what Sark wanted to do, and they stopped it, right? And they still only lost by 3. Like, really, that game, you replay that game, I feel like 6 times out of 10 Texas wins that game, in my opinion.
Yeah. I could tell late in the game, Sark kind of started his script over. He ran some of the exact same plays he opened up with, right? A lot with the RPO stuff with DeAndre Moore, fake quick screen. He scored off one, but the interception to Matthew Golden, it was kind of what we opened the game up with. And Isaiah Bond didn't come back to the ball. It was a similar route. They just played it different. They played the same looking coverage, except it wasn't cover 2. The first pass that Matthew Golden, I don't know if you remember early, he caught down the sideline. The safety didn't get over top. They were playing cover 2. The corner kind of let him go. No, he didn't roll out. Not that one. It was just a go route down the sideline. The corner.
Oh, yeah, when the big play, and then it led to the pick, right?
Led to the pick, yeah. But they came back with the exact same coverage, except the corner played 2-man under, which he was sinking under. And then when he turned around, he was already there, like on the comeback route. And so they played it differently, but they kind of knew what was coming. Because I saw it coming. It's like, oh, we started our script over. Okay, we're running the exact same plays we opened up with. I wonder if Georgia notices, which I'm sure they did, and they made the correct calls. As you see those coaches over there, they're like they were jumping the routes. You saw Kirby going down the sideline.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, so it comes to really, it just comes down to execution. Most teams can know what you're doing, but you just have to find a way to execute. Yeah. And I think our guys up front just have to take this game personal and say, hey, from a mental standpoint, we're going to run through you no matter what. I don't care what the call is. I'm about to run through you. It doesn't matter who you got up front. Here we come. Same with the same mentality we had versus A&M in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I need that same type of mentality back playing at Georgia or anybody else because they have the capability to do it, and they show they can do it. It's just do it. Execute.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about with recruiting is when you get these guys, what is the purpose of having these guys, these big bodies up front and stacking, classes on top of classes? It's so, you can run it at Georgia's throat, similar to as you do to Kentucky or A&M. That's what you should be able to do, and do it to the tune better than 2.7 yards a carry, ideally, less outside zone and more just run it up their teeth. Because Sark, very publicly challenge the offensive line. Hey, we're going to be more physical. We're going to try and run the ball. And it worked, right? And in these kind of games, Trey Wisner doesn't need to pop off for 186 or 158 like he did against Kentucky and A&M respectively, right? We see with ETN what he ran for a little less than 100, and that's enough, right? And that's enough in these kind of games. It's sort of a get your yards where you can get them kind of game. And unfortunately, when they knew we were running, we could not run it on them because we were, trying to pull this outside zone crap. And they just knew exactly where we were going, and then beat them to the spot and set the edge on a lot of them. But I do think they would have had a better chance if they tried just going up the gut a little bit more. But this is probably also one of those games where you start to realize the loss of C.J. Baxter and not quite having an elite running back like a Jonathan Brooks or last year C.J. Baxter down the stretch. I think that does kind of hurt you in these games, and you're starting to see it.
I was also thinking we were going to get a little bit of Gibson, though, who's a bigger back, who seems to just fall forward, just to mix it up. I don't remember seeing him in the game whatsoever.
Yeah, he didn't get a carry.
Right.
Jaden Blue got 2 carries.
Yeah.
Gibson didn't come in. Was that you that texted in the group chat and was like, hey, where's Jarek? I can't remember.
I don't think it was me, but I was like, I thought I would see him at some point because he's a bigger guy. Look, if you go back and look at the Michigan game, we ran against them and their stout front, right? Like, why not have that same approach?
And Ohio State couldn't. So I'm like, that's exactly like when I saw that game, Michigan, Ohio State, I'm like, oh, this Michigan defense is still good. Yeah. So then I just thought to myself, I'm like, where's that Texas offense? Where's that Texas ground game?
Yeah, that's tough. We have some uncharacteristic drops by people. Even my man Gunnar Helm. So I think a lot of things are just off yesterday. Just not that these guys don't try hard. They were not focused. They were focused. They played hard. It's just sometimes the ball just not bounce your way. You saw the fumbles that we caused. One went out of bounds. And
I know. And Mike T, the most cognizant player typically, is laying on a fumble, didn't grab it. I mean, it was just it did seem like there was just a lot of weird Jalen Gilbo celebrating instead of pushing upfield and possibly getting us across the 50 or a touchdown. It just felt like uncharacteristic things when people talk about, the Sark culture mimicking a Saban culture. It's where, your guys are typically not the ones with nerves or making the mistakes in the game. But I think what sometimes Texas fans need to remind themselves is this is like year 2 of Texas kind of being back on the center stage, right? Yeah. Second playoff performance. This isn't, Mac Brown. Shoot, what was it? Mac Brown was he won his title, year 8, year 9, something like that?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And I think a lot of times people have this like immediate, like they just need instant gratification. They're like, why is he not, winning already? Why is he not Georgia already? Why is he not Alabama already? Because that takes 5 years typically, so I think it's just one of those things where these Texas guys, you lose a couple of these games. Look at Georgia with Alabama. Heck, I mean, Saban left and Kirby still lost to him this year. So I do pretend there's not a mental aspect there. They're like, Kirby kind of knows he got Sark in the first game, and he sort of got him a little bit yesterday. It wasn't as bad, right? But I think there's definitely a mental aspect. And when these guys, the guys that'll stay to next year, the Anthony Hills of the world, the Ryan Wingos, Arch, for example, sitting back watching, they'll remember this stuff and they'll remember this feeling. And I think it only helps because typically to get to the milestone, you have to, get knocked down a little bit and you have to pass certain notches, like, winning in Bryant-Denny. That was a huge one, right? Winning the Big 12 again. That was a huge one. Getting to the SEC title. It's a little bit tougher than the Big 12. We were talking about it in the group chat. I'll admit it's a little bit tougher than the Big 12. But yeah, I think it's just a trial, not a trial and error, but just kind of it's an arduous journey to get to the top for sure. And it's lots of adversity. To think that it's just going to happen overnight is not the case. You even see it with Dan Lanning. It looks like smooth sailing right now. He lost to Washington twice last year. Say they're going to bring it home this year.
Yeah. I think, and going back looking at the game, kind of just Georgia had their drops. They had their miscues, and
that's Georgia.
So it's like it almost equals out a little bit. They had a backup quarterback, right? And so I know a lot of people talk about the things we did wrong with the drops and the penalties, and I know they didn't get. Did they have a penalty called on them at all?
Hold on, let me see. That Sark clip was hilarious. Yeah, why don't you call holding on them? Because I mean, shoot, that freaking roughing the passer call.
Oh,
come on. I mean, we're not here to make any sort of accusations. We would never do such a thing. But it's in Atlanta, Georgia. Like Texas walking into the SEC first year, it probably ruffles some feathers. They don't want them winning the conference, maybe. But so it was 11-5 penalties. So we more than doubled up their penalties. 94 penalty yards. Now that roughing the passer one was BS. There were some holding calls that were BS. There were some ones that weren't called on them that should have been called. That late hit on Quinn, that was high. I mean,
I felt Sark's energy through the TV when he said, "Holding film this." I could feel it. I don't think the reporter knew what to say or do. She was like, "Okay,"
And it just abruptly ended the interview. It was kind of like a mic drop moment. I mean, I like that. I like when coaches don't do coach speak and are just like, "You see,
that's my coach right there."
Yeah, you seeing this crap that I'm watching right now?" And they were like, "Yeah, we all are." But I'm glad he, addressed it. But. Yeah, I mean, I think, like you're saying, Georgia, that's just kind of been their MO with the drops. But I actually think the Gunnar Stockton thing kind of helped them.
Man, that kid came in, and it reminded me a little bit of the Kentucky young quarterback when he came in. He was able to move the ball too. Like kind of like you got to adjust to him. He can run, right? He brought some energy to the team. He brought some life to it. He kind of ran over Manny Muhammad, and the whole sideline went crazy. And you can just feel it. He started making plays. His first drive, he goes down the field and scores. It's like, man, wait, what is going on here? I think it's our defense has such a high standard. They play to such a great level that when guys get open in the secondary, it's like, wait, how is that possible? And to see it, it's like, man, with a backup quarterback, it was head scratching, but I think they tightened down and they got after him. And then he made a young freshman mistake and threw the ball right to Jade. I don't know if he was trying to throw it away or what he was trying to do. Wasn't anybody over there, but he just rolled out and he just threw it. But yeah, it's just. It happens, man. It really does. It's just one of those games. So, Georgia's been there before. They know how to win. Right? We're close. We're getting there.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a new feeling. You can win the games and get A&M like that one. Even though that hadn't been played in 13 years, and that's Kyle Field, they're the ones playing with the most nerves in that game. I feel like Georgia has been the two where it was like, holy crap, the national spotlight's on us, and it kind of to pretend that these 21-year-olds aren't going to have that in their mental psyche, like being like slipping up a little bit here and there. And like we were saying, that Gunnar Stockton kind of galvanized the team, it seemed like. Because then every other guy on the team's like, oh, I need to step up my game because I got this sophomore kid stepping up. And, they seem to play better. I think they had any drops in the second half. And, the kid brought a little bit of a running dynamic to it. So it made things a little easier, and we obviously didn't game plan for it.
Right.
What did I miss?
Dynamic duo. We've just been free balling it.
Yeah, talking about the game, man. Just the adjustments made. Who did what?
I appreciate it. Let's get right back to it. But before we do, all right, I heard a good question the other day. When y'all go to Academy, Do y'all walk left to sports, or do y'all walk right to outdoors?
Left.
I go to outdoors. I'm a country guy, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, man, I really am.
I usually walk left because I want to see what we got shoe wise. I like.
Well, yeah, and that smell when you walk into Academy, that smell is like the perfect blend between new shoes and like a new car. And I just walk, even though I don't play any sports anymore. I just walk out and look at the basketball shoes. I'm checking out baseball bats. You're just like a kid again, but usually when I'm there, it's for an errand. Unfortunately, these days,
go to the putting green, see if that works too.
Academy's like a mall in one.
Exactly. So go to Academy this holiday season. Let the magic happen. Be on your doorstep, whether you're trying to go left and see the basketball and football stuff, or going right to see the backyard bonfires or stuff to help you set up for mornings in a deer stand. Go to Academy Sports and Outdoors. They have all the gear to bring everyone together. I'm hard, usually with some of these ad reads, I'm following word for word. I know Academy. We all know Academy, and it's great to have them on as a sponsor. So make sure you head to Academy Sports and Outdoors, academy.com. They got everything you need for barbecues, for soccer, volleyball, all the different seasons coming up. And if you need some cold weather gear, if you need anything, make sure you head to Academy Sports and Outdoors. You can get it curbside, you can get it delivered, or you can go and buy it there yourself. I like the experience of going and getting it myself. So
Big League Chew on the checkout. You always got to grab some.
What's always interesting to see is the fan gear. Like in Austin, it's like all Longhorns, a little Austin FC, and a little like San Antonio Spurs. You go around Texas, it's like, all right, who's got more Aggie stuff? Who's got more like Mavs and stuff like that? So interesting to see that way. Sorry, I missed a lot of those comments. When you name your internet route or Mississippi, I guess sometimes it doesn't work in crunch time. But I like this one.
Thinking of that joke in the break?
Huh?
Were you thinking of that joke in the break? That's a good one.
Was missing Kelvin Banks a bigger deal in the run game yesterday than we thought? Missing Kelvin Banks is always going to be a big deal. In addition to what he brings physically, which is almost unmatched, Coach, what he does, he is assignment sound. And there were a few times yesterday where we saw Trevor Gooseby miss some assignments.
Yeah, looking at that, and I thought they also put Ham over there to try to help him sometimes, and then Helm ended up being in the solo block, and then Trevor didn't even help him because he got kind of confused, right? So they try to bring him with give him some extra help. But I mean, Gooseby's really, really good, right? He's just a young guy, man. And throwing him into a situation like that, it's one thing to get thrown in the game versus A&M, but starting out versus Georgia, it's a lot to ask for such a young guy. And so missing Kelvin Banks, it's a big deal, right? Because he provides a lot of stability, protection, Quinn's blind side, and you can run behind him, right? He does so many things well. But I thought Gooseby played well for the most part yesterday, besides the missed assignments. Honestly, the left side still played better than the right side with Gooseby being in.
Yeah, and I mean Cam Williams' penalties was once again a problem. But Gooseby, all in all, I think he did pretty good. But to pretend like you don't miss KB in any sort of situation, the guy's projected top 10 pick. Obviously, you're going to miss him, especially against that Georgia front.
Yeah.
One of the things I know Sark complained, and Spiffy, thank you for joining in from wherever you are from Dog Nation, and anybody else from Georgia who's watching. Texas held Michael Williams all night long, never got called once. Maybe not specifically to this, but a sentiment, James, that I feel like we've picked up is that everybody got through last year with Big 12 officiating and thought like, oh, the officiating is going to be a lot better in the SEC. Like it's everything. It just means more, all that. And I feel like I've heard more complaints about officiating from Texas fans this year. But I've also heard it from like national outlets where it's like, why do we just deal with this every single year? And I feel like, hey, if both teams are complaining about officiating, then it's not one of those things where, they were calling it right down the middle. Both teams had a lot to be upset about, it felt like. And Sark made it clear in his halftime interview too.
Yeah, Coach and I were talking about that for a couple minutes there after you had to get off. But, yeah, so like you're saying, is nationally it has been a talking point, but I even, I felt like this is kind of back-to-back Georgia games where I honestly feel like it's every major game you watch this year. I don't know what's going on. It feels like almost a replacement ref situation where every single game there's some sort of viral call that people go, how, what, why? And yeah, I mean, there's just been all sorts of sketchy, weird things going on. Even when the bottle throwing thing went in our favor, right? It was the fact that they knew they got the call wrong. And then as soon as we retaliated, they were like, yeah, actually, we're looking at the Jumbotron, we screwed up. But that's just, it's just get it right initially or set it up where you can reverse calls. I think what we need to start with first is making these guys actual employees and holding them accountable. Whereas, like, we don't even really know who the heck the officials are, right? If, Quinn Ewers screws up, has a bad game, throws a bad interception, Sark screws up, they're interviewed, they're held accountable. These refs are like protected entities. We don't know who the hell they are. Not to say to go like talk crap about a ref, but it's like, hey, what were you thinking there? What always happens is you end up getting a letter from the SEC, 3 days later, and they go, actually, yeah, you're right. That should have been a holding call. Sorry about it. You lost. And like with the South Carolina LSU situation. So I think it's just kind of a thing all across major college football. But I'm not ever one to be like, okay, that's what changed the game, because typically it balances out for the most part. You do see refs kind of make makeup calls. But yeah, that was atrocious. The hit on Quinn that didn't get called, and the roughing the passer that got called on us. There was just a lot of questionable things in my opinion. And I'm not a total homer, so you can take my unbiased opinion. You see the Kentucky basketballs in the back, so to the Georgia fans in the comments, like, I'm just saying what I saw. It seemed like some calls were going against Texas more so than Georgia, but it typically bounces out. I think it's just been bad in general across.
I think that roughing the passer on Beck, it makes sense if you call the roughing the passer on Quinn.
Exactly, yeah.
If you call the roughing the passer on, or if you don't call it on Quinn, then you don't call it on Beck there. So I think it's one of those things where you just kind of look for some consistency in that regard. Any other topics y'all want to get to, or are we good to maybe get on out of here? I know I had to interrupt myself, but anything else y'all wanted to touch on?
Just look, Texas made the playoffs. One of the major goals is still a chance to go get that and win a championship. So let's focus on that. Georgia's in the rearview mirror unless we meet them in the championship game again. So let's just go take care of business in 2 weeks here versus Clemson, man. It's a new season, so let's go get it.
James, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Coach said. Be optimistic, right? Aside from Georgia, Texas went 11-0. You're back where you want to be, same as last year. Except now, didn't get the conference championship. Still made an appearance, though, and now you get a home game. It's a bye week. And it's basically just week-by-week season all over again, right? And Texas got a solid draw. You're going to be favored against Clemson at home, double digits. Then you're going to get Arizona State. Then you're going to be playing in Texas if you play Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee. But obviously 1 week at a time. It's not the end of the world. And, hey, like coming off of last year, how great is it that Texas can rebuild and go right back, to the point where they're in contention in the national title conversation year after year. So that's a refreshing thing. It's been a while for that. So I think just try and be optimistic, and all we can do is look towards the future. Can't really worry about yesterday anymore.
Thank you for everybody from across the SEC who has joined this live stream today. If you're looking for more Texas coverage, head to InsideTexas.com. Just go ahead and join. Tomorrow the portal opens. That's going to be a crazy time. Don't think we'll see a ton of movement from Texas, but it's one of those things where you never know these days. So head to InsideTexas.com. Join us for not just the portal craziness, but also the playoff run as well. Coach, thank you so much. James, thank you so much. Thanks for watching The Day After, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.